So on the day I flew to Brisbane, it absolutely belted with rain in Melbourne. Melbourne's cold and wintry and Brisbane is hot and tropical, so, the contrast wasn't lost on me. I walked whiskey before we left, and we both got absolutely drenched, which was a bit of a tactical error because it made for a pretty uncomfortable flight, but don't worry, I'm tough and metal, I'll survive. And yeah, then when I landed in Brisbane felt real hot. I mean, it was only 25 degrees, but Brisbane heat is different than Melbourne heat. 25 in Brisbane was damn hot. Anyways, the hotel I was staying at was a hotel for the Royal Women's Hospital. And I found that out on the last day. And don't get me wrong, the hotel was great. It was actually a vaguely civilized unit and it was, clean and it was nice and everything like that. But it did make all the taxi drives around Brisbane a little bit awkward. Whenever a taxi driver was driving me home somewhere, they'd get, suddenly very quiet when I told them about where I was staying. And then hesitantly they would ask, so what brings you to Brisbane? I'd tell them, I'm here for the Metallica show. And there was almost like this massive sense of relief from the driver, like, oh, that's what you're here for. Oh, that's great. Okay, yeah, awesome. Welcome to Brisbane. Have a great time. So I got to Brisbane and I went for a wander. And I gotta say, Brisbane, I'm not a fan. Brisbane for me is like the total opposite to Perth. I like Perth despite everything, begging me to dislike Perth. I still actually quite like Perth. Brisbane tries really hard for me to like Brisbane, but it doesn't work. Now, for me, when it comes to cities, I love it when there's a big building and there's something dumb on it, like some big swooping dramatic foyer or some like water feature out the front or just, something that shows a bit of personality. I'm all for that. Almost every building in Brisbane has that. But they don't line up. It's not like there's a consistent theme between the buildings where, you can sort of see, okay, this building is, aesthetically tied with the other building. None of that. So you just sort of have this huge mismatch of stuff. It goes from charming and cool and hey, I appreciate the effort to tacky. Brisbane has all the personality of somebody who has had about 4 facelifts too many. Also, they're wearing 4 different color schemes of makeup where each individual color scheme might look good by itself, but then all 4 together completely don't work at all. And I think this is a good example for how tacky and gross Brisbane can kind of be. This is a mall in the middle of Brisbane. It's effectively Melbourne's Bourke Street Mall, and the mall is quite nice. I had a really nice sorbet here. So yeah, the mall is nice. But for some reason, in the middle of the mall where there's like, it's a family-friendly area, there's a strip club. And it's sandwiched between 2 ice cream joints. And look, I'm not offended by strip clubs or anything like that, but why is that in the middle of the mall? Like that it's totally out of place for that strip club to be there. That being said, I did find a very nice whiskey bar. It'd been a while since I'd gone to a whiskey bar, and this was a place that had all of my favorites, so I was pretty happy to be there. I did feel out of place because I walked in kind of, fresh from the plane, so I was wearing, a t-shirt and shorts and jeans that had been completely drowned in rain from Melbourne and so on and so forth. So I looked a bit scrappy, and then this place I walked into was actually quite nice. But then everybody didn't care. Everybody was like, hey, cool, come in, have a drink. So yeah, if you're in Brisbane and you like whiskey, go here. It's a good spot. Anyways, the next day was the Brisbane Show. This one was seated, but this time I chose a good seat, a seat that was close to the stage, but, kind of side on. Now, this was a completely different experience to Adelaide. When I was in Adelaide, what I was able to do was I was able to see the full stage, I was able to see the full stage show, and that was a really awesome experience to see, everything that was going on the screen the whole time, to be able to watch the whole band all at once and everything like that. That was a really good experience, and I really recommend those seats. Especially because those seats are so cheap because they're so far away. Yeah, the distance can be a bit of a problem if you're worried about that, but as I said, the advantages of being able to see everything, I feel kind of outweigh the negatives. However, at Brisbane, I couldn't really see the screens at all. I could see the screens on the far side, but I couldn't see the screens that were on the side of the arena closest to me. What I could see really well is where the whole band was at all times. Now, this is actually really cool to see because, what a shock, Metallica's stagecraft is actually really awesome. What I didn't recognize was how many times they carefully consider their positioning for where they're going to be on such a massive stage. And yeah, there are definite power moves played by each band member. A great example of that is that for the Unforgiven solo, Kirk Hammett walked right up front, dead center, and the rest of the band sort of pulled back and let Kirk have his moment for that awesome solo. What a power move. I mean, standing there dead center of this huge stage, ripping out this absolutely brilliant guitar solo in front of 50,000 people, it's kind of cool. I mean, all of this might sound really, really obvious, but these are the things that you don't get to experience when you're on the floor in the pit. And they're also not what I could see from the back at Adelaide. In terms of the show, Brisbane might actually have been the most significant Metallica show I've sat and listened to. Reason being is that by that time, the 14-year-old fanboy in me actually shut up for a minute. I was relaxed, I was comfortable, I didn't have the anxiety from the trip at that stage anymore because, you know, all the shows have been going well, everything was going great. So I was able to sit down and I was really able to absorb the entire show. I was able to really appreciate and feel the emotional weight behind all the songs, and I loved everything that I saw. The music nerd in me was able to be objective about what I was listening to. I was able to sort of sit there and pull apart the mix and spots that, you know, gave me joy. I was able to, you know, pinpoint, oh, Kirk's doing that bit, James is doing that bit. You know, my brain shut up enough that I could actually sit down and just absorb what was going on. Now, the highlight of that show was one. Now, that song is holy ground for me. That song is the reason why I started playing guitar, and that song is the reason why all of this exists. The lyrics are significant to me. The themes of that song are significant to me. That guitar solo is like my favorite Metallica moment of all time. Like if I had to be buried with a song, I would probably choose Metallica's One. It'd probably traumatize the hell out of everyone that was there, but I mean, that actually sounds kind of fun to me as well. Yeah, some of that song is embedded in my DNA. The last 3 minutes of that song in particular are holy ground for me. I think that the riffs before the landmine section have like got this really spectacular arrangement, and it doesn't get enough credit. I think it's a really underrated section of Metallica's history, is how awesome that section is before the landmine section. But aside from the fact that those riffs are really, really well crafted and really well layered and everything like that, they lead really well into that landmine section so that when that section hits, it's just pummeling. Kirk's solo in One is pretty much my favorite. Well, except maybe there's solo to No Remorse or Frayed Ends of Sanity. Okay, look, I'm not playing the game of what my favorite Kirk Hammett solo is. We'll be here for too long. But also that harmony section after Kirk's solo is like top tier moment in Metallica for me. And at Brisbane, because the 14-year-old fanboy in my head shut the hell up for a minute, I was actually able to listen to it properly and enjoy the performance properly. I was as relaxed as I would have been had I been listening to it in my car, but instead it was Kirk and James playing it in front of me. I felt every note and it just ripped my head clean off my shoulders. So yeah, Brisbane was a big deal to me. Brisbane's gonna go down as one of my favourite memories on planet Earth.
expose ourselves and our musicianship here, but we have a good time with this. We like to jam and have fun with it. We like to celebrate music from your area, from your country, from your hood. And see if you know this one. If you know this song, you have to sing, all right? You gotta sing with us, because this is real. It's gonna be crazy. All right, you ready, Kurt? All right, here we go. Bass intro. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
that, that's night 4 done. Trip report from night 4. Tonight was a really good night for me. This is the first night that my fanboy brain was able to actually shut up and let me just sit there and enjoy the show. So I was able to actually properly listen to everything and properly enjoy everything, rather than just sort of sitting there with my brain going, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, like the whole time. So, like when Kirk went for a solo, I actually listened to Kirk's guitar solo rather than, just sort of sitting there going, holy shit, Kirk's playing guitar solo. Instead, I was like, hey, let's hear what Kirk's actually playing. So yeah, tonight was actually the night that I managed to properly connect with one of the shows because my brain shut the fuck up for 30 seconds. Had an absolute blast. Now I know how good the show really is, and it only took 4 shows, right? But yeah, tonight was a really, really good night for me. And now I just need to figure out how the hell to get out of this stadium, which proven a bit difficult. I'm not sure if I like Brisbane, but so far Brisbane might have been my favourite Metallica show. Obviously the meet and greet and everything was the favourite Metallica experience, but this might have been the favourite Metallica show I've ever had just because I was able to properly listen to it and properly have a very good time. So yeah, one more show. Now, the day after that was my birthday. Yeah, hey! I'm not going to tell you how old I am. I'm 21, I promise. So I had to do something for my birthday. I mean, yeah, I was traveling around Australia and stalking Metallica and everything like that, but it was a nothing scheduled day, so I had to do something for my birthday. So I went to Australia Zoo. And look, if it's not obvious by the fact that whiskey is in almost every single one of my YouTube videos, yeah, I'm a massive animal lover. Specifically, I love giraffes. Giraffes make no sense. They're gangly, they're spotty, they've got these giant eyelashes that make no sense on top of this weird knobbly head, which also makes no sense. You look at their proportions and you think that the way they're going to move is just going to be awkward and horrible, but somehow it all comes together and they move very gracefully. Like each individual part of the giraffe is kind of ugly by itself, but then combined, it just ends up being this adorable, beautiful creature. I think they're freaking adorable. So as a result, I made sure that I got to pay to feed the giraffes as well. So I basically spent the day walking around, looking at fluffy animals, feeding the occasional fluffy animal, and having the time of my life. Now, for the Australians, one thing I do want to warn you about is that Australia Zoo is a very American place. Even though it's called Australia Zoo, it's clearly a zoo that's themed Australian for overseas tourists. So that sort of ground on me a little bit, but at the end of the day, there were fluffy animals there. I had an excellent time. But I do also have to admit that I was a total mess that day. Anytime an animal looked at me or smiled at me, or at least I assumed that they were smiling at me, I was just thrilled. And in hindsight, this is like the emotional hangover of what Brisbane did to me the night before. That, any bit of positivity just made me elated. So even though I have gripes about Australia Zoo being too American, still an awesome place. Go check it out. I mean, it has giraffes. That's enough of an argument to get me to go anywhere. If there's giraffes there, I'm there. On the way back, I had dinner at Felon's. It's an absolutely gigantic brewery. That's a hard word to say. It's an absolutely gigantic brewery, yeah, close enough, with like a venue, it's got an outdoor cinema, heaps of eating areas, it's massive. And also that place had the best fish and chips I have ever had. Like, oh my God, those fish and chips there were a revelation. Do want to remind you all that, I was running on a high from the Brisbane show the night before, so maybe the fish and chips were simply very good. But for me, for that day, for that night, best fish and chips I've ever had. It's just one of those meals that, restores your faith in existence a little bit. Like, yeah, life is good. And the beer was fresh from the still, obviously, like it's the brewery, so I had one of their beers. And it was so refreshing, and might as well just been drinking a glass of ice. It was just amazing. So, 10 out of 10. So even though I kind of hate the aesthetic of Brisbane and the fact that it looks and feels tacky for me, I can at least recommend that there's a couple of good spots there. Especially if Metallica are playing. Real good spot.
Sydney, do you want heaven?
Last stop was in Sydney, and I was staying with an absolute legend of a mate who we've been best mates for, God, more than 10 years now. He showed me around Manly, and we went to a couple of distilleries and checked out what the locals had to offer. They had a Felons at Manly, so we stopped there for lunch. And I gotta admit, the Felons at Manly wasn't anywhere near as good as the Felons at Brisbane. The next day we met up with some of his mates and we did a mini pub crawl on the way to the venue. But for this gig, I was on the floor while he and his mates were in the seats. It was the last show of the tour, so I wasn't leaving anything on the table. When I got to the floor, I looked around and tried to find the most metal looking people I could find. Now this might sound like I was scanning the scene in the city tonight, looking for you to start up a fight. I wasn't, I was looking for the mosh pit. And also, most people will tell you that metalheads are some of the kindest, friendliest, most gentle fans that you'll generally meet. So often the scarier looking crowd, the nicer and more behaved crowd it is. So once I found a crowd of shirtless, tattooed, bearded brethren, I knew I was in the right spot. I told them I was looking for the pit, and everyone around me looked at me like I was an idiot and said, well, what do you think we're here for? This wasn't going to be like Perth. Now, one complaint I will say about the tour is that pretty much every show had the same set list. This is a little bit different for Metallica because Metallica are well known for changing their set list almost every night. In fact, one thing that they're doing at the moment are no repeat weekends, where the set list that they play on Saturday is completely different from the set list that they play on Sunday, in that there's no repeats. So if they play Enter Sandman on Saturday, they're not playing it on Sunday. For the Australian tour, Metallica actually kind of did the same set list pretty much every night. There were about 2 songs differences every night, and that's about it, which was a little bit disappointing, I have to admit. Don't get me wrong, the set list that they played was a good set list, but I was hoping for more of that variety that Metallica tours are known for. That being said, it did give me with one really big advantage. As I said earlier, when you're on the floor, it's hard to pay attention to everything that's going on, especially when you're getting thrown around in a mosh pit. But that wasn't going to be a problem considering I'd already seen the show 4 times before, so for the 5th time on Sydney, I already knew everything that was going, I knew the best places to be, I knew what was happening, so I could just focus on the mosh pit and let it all out. Especially considering at Brisbane, I had all my music nerd boxes ticked, and in Melbourne, which we'll talk about soon, I had all the other boxes ticked. At this show, I was just looking for my mosh pit fix. And I gotta say, Sydney was the best goddamn mosh pit I've ever been in my life. It was huge, it was frantic, but it was also very well controlled, very well behaved, and very, very respectful. Don't get me wrong, I got the absolute hell beaten out of me in that pit, but at the same time, the moment somebody hit the deck, there was a ring around that person, making sure that they were okay, helping them up. There was people holding up phones, holding up random shoes that got ripped off, and so on and so forth. Glasses were being looked after. So, you know, everybody was there for a good time. Everybody was there looking out for each other, but it was also rough as hell. There's been a lot of fuss how there's Metallica fans from like every generation. You got the guys who grew up with Metallica who are the same age as Metallica, and much respect to you veterans. Then you got the older guys like me, and then you've also got like the 14-year-old kids who are discovering metal for the first time and doing that via Metallica. All of these generations of people were in that pit, and it was awesome to see. If I'm honest, one of the coolest things was watching the kids get into the pit for the first time. Because like at the start of the show, they watched the pit, and I'm going to admit, if you've never seen a mosh pit before, it can be pretty intimidating. You got all these guys like screaming and slamming into each other, and again, if you're not into mosh pits, this isn't going to make any sense to you, so cool, I'm not expecting you to understand. But yeah, all the kids were on the outside watching the veterans slam into each other and, you know, throw each other around and have a great time. And they could see how much fun we were having, so they wanted to get involved, but at the same time, they didn't want to get hurt, which is fair enough. So as the show went on, the veterans and us older guys, we would encourage the kids to actually get involved. We would like, you know, give them our shoulder and say, come on, slam into us, and so on and so forth. And the kids would run into the pit and slam into us and then run straight out again. And it was awesome. By the end of the show, you had everyone running through the pit. You had the old guys, you had the veterans, you had all the metalheads, and you even had the kids running through, and everybody was having the time of their lives, and everybody was looking out for one another. Everybody got thrown around, everybody got slammed into, but nobody went home with any permanent injuries. Well, mostly. I gotta admit, the week after this Sydney show, I spent a week with a bit of pain whenever I tried to take a deep breath because something went wrong with my ribs. All up, I counted 17 bruises in some strange places as well, but all of these were battle scars that were well earned in that mosh pit. And hey, all of it healed. All of it healed, so I just got to have the time of my life in the greatest mosh pit I've ever had. I've been in mosh pits for Exodus, I've been in Slayer pits, I've been in Motorhead pits. Motorhead pits were like top tier for the record. But yeah, in all honesty, that Sydney show, that Sydney mosh pit, greatest mosh pit of my life. So if you're watching this and by some chance you were in that Sydney mosh pit, thank you for giving me the greatest mosh pit experience of my life. And also, God bless you. So yeah, Sydney was the last show, and I can proudly say I didn't leave anything on that table. I was kind of crawling out of the show at the end, but running high on adrenaline, and yeah, it was amazing. Show number 5, get the whole tour. Kind of sad that it's done now because they have another Metallica show to look forward to. At the end of this show though, Lars and Kirk, they all said that they will be back soon, so I'm holding it to you bastards. You better be back soon because I want to do this shit again. For Sydney, I didn't get much footage because it was the last show, so I wanted to enjoy my show, right? And I was focused on being in the mosh pit, and it was the greatest mosh pit of my life, seriously. About 150 people slamming into each other, bouncing off each other, having the time of our goddamn lives. If you don't get it, you never will, and that's cool. By some weird chance, if you were at this Sydney show, and you were in the mosh pit, sort of near Lars, right at the end during Enter Sandman, I love you guys. You guys gave me one of the best nights of my life. All right, I'm getting out of here. Have a good one.